Welcome to the Times of Industry show. I have a great show, and we're recording this on November 4th. The time here in Israel is 8:05 p.m., where my guest Mark is in Canada. What is the time over there?
It's 11 a.m. here in British Columbia, Canada.
Okay, so 11 a.m. Pacific. Actually, it's not Pacific if it's 11 and not 10.
I'm on Mountain Time.
Mountain Time, exactly. Okay, and I'm going to screen share a little bit because this is going to be posted in just a few hours. So hopefully everything stays as relevant as possible. Mark, thank you for joining us. Election day is over. The results are not in. I want to talk to you about how this will impact precious metals. I want to talk to you about the elections themselves. You're a Canadian. I'm an Israeli. I think it's the perfect match to talk about U.S. elections because we can talk openly. And then I want to show people a little bit. Here it is. So I want to show people what's going on right now. This is something I stumbled upon this morning. This is what happens when Google feeds you the information, Mark. They have a joint collaboration with the Associated Press. And actually, they were early before even NBC and other networks showed 238, and we're still showing 220. These guys are showing 238, so they were first to that. Now let's look at what's happening here and what's important. So Alaska is probably going to go to Trump. It's basically a done deal, and then we have Nevada that. Biden leads, according to Associated Press, by 8,000 votes, which is 0.6%. So at 0.5%, we know that it doesn't automatically raise a recount, but they can ask for a recount, 0.5% or less. So this is very tight. We have Wisconsin, which Biden's in the lead again, very tight, but by 21,000 votes. We have Michigan, that was flipped just recently, literally a few minutes ago. And there's a lot of things going on Twitter right now where they paused, and then boom, you saw an uptick in Biden votes, and boom, they paused. So they're already talking a little mail-in fraud over there because Trump led all the way in Michigan, and it flipped literally just now. 50,000 votes spread them. Pennsylvania, where Trump is comfortably in the lead right now, but we know that the Democrats have not come in with their mail-in votes because in Pennsylvania they just started to count them today. North Carolina, where Trump is in the lead again, and Georgia, where Trump is in the lead again. So these are going to decide the elections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Mark, first of all, the website is a phenomenal website that you guys have, swpcayman.com. And you guys do a lot. You have a lot of services going on, just in an elevator pitch kind of, self-promotion. What do you guys do over there?
So SWP is a fully integrated precious metals dealer and secure storage facility. So basically what we do is we buy and sell precious metals. We help our clients acquire them and then liquidate them further down the road. And in the meantime, we provide them with secure storage in the Cayman Islands, which happens to be one of the world's leading financial services districts.
If you don't mind, let's screen share, please, on your end, and you can show people the website and a little bit more about what you guys do.
Okay, sure. Let me just pull that up. Happy to do that.
Yeah, because I think it's very interesting what you guys have going on, and I'd love for the viewers to see a little bit more about the precious metals angles that you guys bring to the table.
Yeah, so right here on the first picture that you see is actually our building. So that's the building that we own and operate in the Cayman Islands. So one important thing to know about us is that we not only act as a precious metals dealer, but we also own and operate our own vault. So when people are buying and selling precious metals with us, they're dealing directly with the owner and operator of the facility, which removes a lot of third-party risk. It also gives them a certain level of privilege to communicate directly with us. And that way, if they need a favor, they need something done quickly, we can do that for them. Just to clarify, when we talk about precious metals, we're very old school in the sense that everything that we sell is physical precious metals. So it's bars and coins, gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, as opposed to a paper product or a fund, anything like that. We're selling really physical bars and coins that are personal property that belong to our investors.
I think personally, the gold people love the old school. They want to hold in their hands.
Absolutely, I think so. From experience, I mean, I've been in the industry for about 15 years now. There's a number of different products and different ways that you can invest in metal, whether it be an ETF, through the mining stocks, through physical metals. They all have their pros and cons, but I think if you want to eliminate counterparty risk and you want to really be assured of owning your own personal property in times of crisis or even during regular times, I think physical segregated precious metals is the way to go. When we talk about storage, Lior, just quickly, this is what you're talking about. Basically, our clients each have their own uniquely identified segregated bins that their precious metals are stored in. We also offer safe deposit boxes as a second way of storing precious metals. So really an old school concept. It's kind of what banking used to be, but we found it to be very popular over the last decade or so, especially since the last financial crisis in 2008 through 2011.
And what are these other storage locations that I see on the website? And what is crypto storage?
Yeah, I'll get to crypto in a second. So, we think the Cayman Islands is a fantastic place. It's where we own and operate our vault. I spent 3 years living there when I was setting up the business. It's a truly unique place. People like you, entrepreneurs.
I've been there last year, actually.
Oh, okay, great. Well, then you have a sense of what it's like.
No, 2018.
Yeah, it's a really unique spot. And, we think that it's a perfect place for Americans and Canadians and Latin Americans, especially, to put some of their precious metals offshore, because it is, geographically speaking, very close to home for them, yet still offshore and still governed by its own laws. But we realize that our investors are global people. They're people like you. They like to travel. They like to get around. They like to look at places like Singapore, for example, Liechtenstein, which is a great small European country. A lot of people place precious metals and other assets in Liechtenstein for wealth preservation purposes. So we offer a variety of different locations, from Cayman all the way down to New Zealand, if you want to get your precious metals as far away from the United States, let's say, as possible.
And what is crypto storage?
Crypto storage is basically just an extension of what we offer our clients for precious metals. So in 2017, we saw a lot of people coming from Silicon Valley to the Cayman Islands looking for places to store their cryptocurrencies, their wallets. These were people that were starting businesses in Cayman or who had amassed a fortune in a short period of time, guys younger than even us. You're talking guys in their mid-20s a lot of the times, showing up on the island, and they're like, they've got millions of dollars on these storage devices and these wallets.
You're talking like a cold storage, like Ledger? Okay.
I'm talking about the cold storage, yeah, exactly. And so they started showing up at our facility, and at first we thought, well, these guys are going to want to convert their Bitcoin into gold and silver, but really what they wanted was a safe place to store their wallets offline. They wanted a cold storage location. And so we got into the business at that point of offering cold storage offshore for cryptocurrencies, which is really just renting a safe deposit box inside of the same vault where we store the gold and silver for.
Okay, so you don't sell crypto, you're not a dealer, but you're offering the bin, the secured bin with all the operation. So if you feel safe enough to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in gold or silver, or platinum, and palladium, then you can feel safe enough to put a ledger that has Bitcoin or otherwise on it. That's the idea.
That is the idea. One thing worth noting, though, is we do accept Bitcoin. We've actually accepted as payment for precious metals since 2017. We were the first business in the Cayman Islands to publicly announce that we were accepting Bitcoin as payment. So if you ordered a $50,000 worth of gold today, you could pay for that in Bitcoin through SWP. So it gives you another liquidity option if you're interested.
Now, can I ask you, in the last year, especially since COVID, Has there been a change in the demographics that buys precious metals since March? Have you seen a shift in the gold silver ratio? In other words, in the demand? Is it more small orders from retail and silver, or is it more big orders, 50K, 100K, quarter million, and focused on gold? Is it both? A little bit more about the age of the demographics, and have you sensed any changed since
Mhm.
August 5th, basically since the all-time high in gold? Have you sensed any change in the last 2 months, and any change around this time of the elections? And it's a lot of questions, so if you
Yeah.
have time
So one at a
unpacking.
time. So to give you an idea, it's kind of high level what the volume within the precious metals industry has been like, really starting last year, but picking up, in March when COVID really hit hard. You saw a big decline in all markets, including precious metals initially, and then a strong resurgence of the gold and silver prices. The sales are up year over year about 160% for SWP, but that's also true amongst other industry colleagues that we speak to. So really a huge demand for physical precious metals, so much so that delivery times have been delayed from what used to be 1 week all the way up to 6 weeks. I've seen delivery times as far out as 8 weeks on certain products. So really a strong surge in demand from many different segments of precious metal investors. But two things that I have noticed that really struck me is, number one, you're seeing a lot of first-time investors. And this is in large part because gold and silver have once again become relevant in the media. It's sad to say, but the media influences so many of our decisions. And this is true also with gold and silver investing. So when gold is creeping up towards an all-time high, when silver is close to $30 an ounce again, it starts to become relevant news. It's on the second page of the business section, maybe front page news at one point. And when that happens, you get all these first-time investors that say to themselves, am I missing out? Should I be in precious metals? And so they're coming and finding people like us to invest in. What's interesting in our case is because we're offshore, even these first-time precious metal investors are coming and buying offshore. And what that tells me is that they're really worried about their jurisdiction that they're living in. Whether they be American, whether they be a Canadian, whether they be a European, they have a fear somewhere, and they're buying precious metals offshore because of this fear. As we've approached the election, we've seen a slight decline in the demand in precious metals. I think it's been reflected in the price, whereas we hit the all-time high in gold. We've seen a little bit of a pullback now, closer to $1,900, sub $1,900. The same for silver. It's dropped about 15% in the last few weeks. And the reason for that, I think, is because of the uncertainty that people have approaching the election. What is the outcome of the election going to have on the effect of precious metals and so on? So people are waiting, I think, right now. But the overall trend is still fairly strong.
Interesting. I'm sharing a screen on zerohedge.com. It's a very popular website. I don't know if you use it as well. And one thing that's interesting, Mark, is that they're talking already about voter fraud and the fact that this election may take a little while. We know that Safe Harbor Day is December 8th. So this can literally last until December 8th. And we know that Trump pulled some moves with the Supreme Court to make sure that there are more judges that lean to his point of view than to a Democratic point of view, which was obviously smart going into this. I'd like to ask you, first of all, do you see any issues with how investors and foreign creditors, other nations, would look at the stability of a country like the United States and would say this is a real crisis, and may shy away from the dollar? Because I'm asking you this because we've seen in 2020, when everything was selling off in March, we saw that people had no fear of the dollar. They sold stocks, they sold bonds, and everything went to the US dollar. In fact, it was so much demand for the US dollar that the Fed had to intervene and print more money, et cetera, et cetera. It was literally a deflationary kind of meltdown of everything else except cash. I'm wondering if the uncertainty that we're going to see in the next few days, perhaps weeks, do you feel like people are going to sell everything and go to dollars, or do you think that there's going to be something else going on. And I'd like to get your opinion on what you think precious metals will be like under any of the presidents. So, what do you think the impact of a Biden presidency or a Trump presidency would be on gold and silver? You take the floor.
I mean, I can only comment really, Leo, on what I'm seeing from within the precious metals space, and I kind of like to use real life examples because they're true, and I can reference them and not necessarily speculate. What I'm seeing from our clients that are institutional clients, clients that manage funds in Europe and in Central America and Latin America, is that they are positioning more money in precious metals. So I consider them to be the smarter money, not to knock the mainstream investors. The mainstream investors, unfortunately, tend to follow trends very closely. If your neighbor is buying something, you're more likely that you'll do the same thing as your neighbor, as act on your own or think for yourself. Whereas someone who has a lot of time to study the markets, such as you, might make a more educated guess. And that's what I'm seeing right now anyway, is that we're seeing more and more funds move into precious metals and be more aggressive. So I think that's a reflection of their sentiment, basically, that they feel there's more risk in the marketplace. And I think the U.S. election, obviously, without knowing the results, but the likelihood that regardless of who comes, or whether Trump remains president or whether Biden becomes president, you're going to see a lot of stimulus, continued stimulus as they try to deal with the COVID situation. There's going to be a lot of stimulus worldwide from other governments. We can't forget, it's not only about the United States here, it's also about large countries like Germany who are going back into lockdown. Is this going to happen and affect those large economies? Even here in Canada, we're going back into lockdown. So these decisions by government basically are probably going to lead to more stimulus, which is going to effectively create more risk in the marketplace, more unknown in the marketplace in the future. And I think that is positive for gold. And the bottom line is, I think regardless if Biden is elected or regardless if Trump is reelected, we will see a positive continuation in the gold and silver price trend, a continuation of what we've been seeing for the last year, until at least we get this COVID situation figured out. Because I think ultimately that is more important, how the world deals with COVID and the kind of looming depression that we're teetering on the edge of, than whether or not Biden or Trump is the president of the United States.
Okay. We've seen a lot of new fund managers, specifically Paul Singer and Warren Buffett, coming into the gold space. Do you think that COVID-19 has really made some investors understand the importance of owning gold? I mean, in the 21st century, gold has been one of the best performing major asset classes out there. And it doesn't seem like in a fiat monetary currency system that there's any reason for gold to fundamentally be weak. And so obviously a fund manager, he rather put his money in stocks, which compound theoretically faster than 6.6% that gold has done in the last 50 years. But I'm thinking about sovereign wealth funds and pension funds and countries and central banks, and they're trying to offset their major dollar positions. Who, in your opinion, really shapes prices for precious metals? Do you think it's a combination of retail people, or is it more the big buyers? And who are these big buyers?
Well, I mean, you have three major participants in the precious metals space. You have central banks that are, again, you can say a lot of things about central banks. There's a lot of criticism, obviously, to be made by gold buyers, but I tend to call them smart money. These people spend a lot of time evaluating risk in the global marketplace, and they have been net buyers of gold for over a year now. They've been buying more and more gold, adding to their positions. Then you have the institutional buyers. You have ETFs. You have funds. Again, smart money that has been piling into precious metals more and more recently. And then the third participant is the mainstream investor, which actually makes up a very large, when you talk about physical precious metals, the consumption of physical precious metals makes up a very large portion of that segment. And even they are becoming more interested now. The mainstream investors are always last to the party. And they are now arriving. And like I said earlier, you're seeing a lot of first-time investors. So when I look at the demand from central banks, the demand from institutional money, and demand from mainstream investors, it's all positive right now. And I think that's all based on perceived risk in the marketplace. So seeing these very well-known fund managers take a bite, albeit small by, relative to their overall positions that they manage, it's still an indicator that more and more people are finding safe havens or safe haven in gold.
Mark, if people are interested in understanding more about how to buy precious metals and how to store them, storage fees, jurisdictions, etc., can they get on a call with yourself or one of the guys in your team?
Yeah, it used to be a few years ago that if you picked up the phone and called SWP, I'd be the one answering the phone. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that anymore. Just my responsibilities have pulled me away from dealing with most of our clients, unfortunately. But we do have a great team. We're about 15 strong now at SWP. We have a sales team of 4 people. So if you call and ask questions about buying or selling metal, or you want to put metals in storage, you would speak to someone from our sales team. One thing I would like to mention, Lior, one thing that I think prevents a lot of people from investing in precious metals is a lack of education in our sector in general. There's a misconception or a myth basically that surrounds gold and silver that, number one, you have to be wealthy to buy it, which is completely untrue. You can buy an ounce of silver today for about $26 in physical form. And so I don't know too many people that have an actual investment portfolio that cannot allocate $25 a month, but more importantly, it should be more like 10 to 20% of their investment portfolio in metals. So number one, you don't have to be wealthy. Number two is it's one of the simplest things you're ever going to invest in your life. It's really simple because we know generally how gold and silver behave, and we know when they're going to behave that way. And that's during pre-crisis periods and during crisis periods. We know that they perform very well to insulate your overall portfolio, to act as wealth insurance or to help preserve your wealth that you've already accumulated. So I think just by educating yourself or speaking to people, in our industry that can give a basic education, it's going to go an awfully long way. And we'd see a lot more people buying precious metals in general. So check out our YouTube videos called Inside the Vault, 16 videos dedicated to educating people about buying gold and silver. I think that'd be very helpful.
Yeah. I'm always amused by the fact that if literally if every person would buy 1 ounce of silver, there would be no silver above ground, because there's only 2.5 billion above ground to my knowledge, and we're 8 billion people with 1 ounce. So
exactly. So maybe you and I will start the revolution.
Well, I'm in it. So I've done my part, believe me. Hey, really fun chatting with you, and we'll post this, obviously, because of the news cycle is changing, Mark. We'll post this in a few hours. Hopefully people get a lot of value with this, and thank you very much for appearing on our show.
Well, thanks for having me, Lior. I appreciate it.